Beautiful in and out. Someone who is smart, who is intelligent. So I want like the total package.
The No Ordinary Love Podcast with Rosalind Ona. Every relationship is unique. It has its own rhythm and melody. What worked for them may not necessarily work for you. Welcome to the No Ordinary Love Podcast. We're so excited to have you guys here today. I'm here with my guest, Ormuka. I'm going to let you introduce yourself to the people out there.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here. My name is Ormuka. Yeah, and I'm excited to be here. I'm actually a cousin, auntie, niece, whatever, to Rosalind here, and it's like really exciting being on here with you guys.
Yes, a little nepo going on here for the people. No, she has a great YouTube channel. So for the people who don't know you, you can share a little bit about your background and who you are.
Okay. Well, I'm a first-time mom. I have almost 2-year-old, and that's pretty new in my life. I'm also a wife, been married for going on, is it 3 already? Going on 3 years.
Yes.
I'm also a college student, which is interesting doing that while having a child. And yeah, that's pretty much me as of right now.
Yeah, she had like the most amazing wedding. We'll probably link to it. Like she had like, we're of Nigerian, our background is Nigerian. So she went full out, like all the whole traditional ceremonies and the church wedding. It was like gorgeous. It was such a fun time. Lots of family.
Thank you.
And there's a whole like YouTube video. So we'll link to that as well for you. But I'd love to go a little bit deeper in terms of, you said you're in school now. Can you share a little bit about what you're studying? And
yeah, so actually, I went back to school. So originally, I went to college and actually started nursing school, but this was kind of before the pandemic, and I was working with individuals with special needs and everything, and I just felt like I wasn't giving 100% anymore. And these are people's lives. I couldn't commit to doing that and not giving 100% at my job. So I left that, took some time, and I was like, I think what I want to do is digital marketing and advertising. I love my YouTube channel. I love doing makeup, talking to people, socializing. And as a mom, I've changed everything before I became a mom, but I was thinking of what I want to do for the rest of my life, even with the things that are going to change in my life. So while having children and everything, I still want something that I can do either from home or going into an office, but something that won't affect my main priority of having my children and taking care of my home and my family. So that's my background. So as I'm in school now, it's for digital marketing and advertising. I actually graduate pretty soon, so that's also pretty exciting as well.
no, that's super, super, super exciting. And I know that it'll be such a good fit for you given your background already with all the videos you've done. But I'm also curious about your being a mom, because I know that's really important to you.
It is. So we're laughing because I always keep saying I want like 1,000 kids. I want 6 kids, by the way. But yeah, being a mom is so important to me. And I also think it's important to have something that you do for yourself. And one of the things I experienced, especially as a first time mom, was a bit of postpartum depression or postpartum blues. I wouldn't say depression, but I knew it was because as someone that's so outgoing and has their own stuff that they were doing, when I became a mom and started just staying home with my baby, I had nothing besides like just talking to a baby all day. And that's amazing. It's a blessing and it's great. But when you continue to do that, you lose everything that you're interested in. You lose everything about yourself before you became a mom. And I feel like even though motherhood is so important, I think balance is also important. It's important to have something that you can, leave the baby talk and talk to adults and have something for yourself that's tangible besides your main purpose. Like for me, which I think is my purpose, is to raise my children and And then that balance is just perfect. I get to still, you know, embrace being a woman and going out and maybe even dressing up, doing my makeup and stuff, and then come home and I get to just chill and be with my son. So
Mhm.
I think the balance is really good. And
Yeah.
why I said, sorry, but why I said like digital marketing is because I can find something that's more, flexible to work from home compared to like a typical like go into the office type of job. Even though that's coming back, I can see that that's, becoming popular again. But with that, I think it's more flexible.
Yeah, and I think it's so important to design your life and to create the
Hmm.
life that brings you joy. And I don't
Right.
think that there is a prescription, especially today with technology and all the options that we
Hmm.
have. And I really applaud you for recognizing that and doing that and kind of creating what works for you. Your primary goal is being a mom, and you're a
Yeah.
great mom, and you want to have, a lot of kids to love. So I think it's good that
Yeah.
you're doing something, and especially recognizing that you're an individual alongside being a mom and trying
Yeah.
to figure out that balance for you. So that's something that I really admire that you're doing.
Thank
Um,
you.
Really quick, you mentioned blues, postpartum blues, and depression. Kind of what is
Hmm.
the difference between the two for people who may not know?
That's a good question. So, for anyone that is struggling with postpartum depression, I feel like it's a longer period.
Hmm.
The feeling is very similar. With postpartum blues, it's kind of just like you're having a bad day for 2 weeks.
Hmm.
With postpartum depression, it's actually like something that you might need medical help with.
Hmm.
You know, with postpartum depression, a lot of women might go through it, but they don't know. And some of them, it gets to a point where it's like so extreme that they actually need help from a doctor and maybe medication or something because it's not like if you take a nap, you wake up and you're, oh, okay, I just needed some sleep. With postpartum blues, it's the fact that life is hitting you in a way that it has never hit you before. And sometimes you just actually do need a good nap,
Hmm.
and some time away from the new responsibilities that you have. But with postpartum depression, you might try doing everything to, you know, help, but it doesn't. You might need to actually talk to someone. You might need to go to counseling or take medication.
Hmm.
Um, I feel like that's the main difference.
Yeah. So blues seems like it's more of a short term, and you can kind of use your own interventions to kind
Right.
of alleviate it, while depression obviously
Hmm.
is like a medical
Yeah.
condition that you need the help of a doctor. So obviously you're married, you're a mom. Tell us a little bit about your version of no ordinary love. Like, how did you find love in the love you have in your life right now?
That's a good one. It's always, I don't know if I've told you like the story of me and Reggie, but it's, it's honestly so funny because the way we met actually was pretty interesting. I had no business being at this birthday party. I didn't know whose birthday it was. It was a birthday dinner rather. And I had heard of Reggie and his brother, but
What did you
I
hear about
didn't.
them before?
Oh, that they're just the funniest people in the group and they're really cool people and everything. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess. I wasn't really part of that group, but I was like, okay, if I get to meet them, cool. If not, cool. And I meet them and I'm like, oh yeah, they are pretty chill people. And after meeting them, maybe 10 minutes later, we're seated. It was like a hibachi place. And Reggie walks up to me and he asked me to be his date for the evening. He just walked up and said, would you be my date for the evening? And I'm just like, why are you asking me that? And
Bold.
very, very bold. And he sat beside me and it's been laugh and just a fun time ever since. So that's how I guess that's how I found No Ordinary Love, from him being super bold. And now here we are, almost 8 years into our
Wow.
relationship and
Wow.
a
Yeah.
baby later. So
What I love is like you guys kind of grew up together. So you
yeah,
got to experience each other from when you were quite young, and now
yeah,
you're
yep,
more mature. So, well, good for
yeah.
you guys. That's very
That is a
exciting.
blessing, to grow up. And as a Christian, for me, I always will be like, God, I want to meet the husband of my youth. And
Mm.
grow with him, and we've been growing.
And also because one of your dreams or your purpose is to have a larger family, I think it's really good that you guys met young so that you can,
Yeah.
grow and have this family. So that's great.
Yeah, learn more about each other before, bringing children into the world. I feel like it's easy to have the children, it's not easy to raise them,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's not even easy having children too, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
easier than raising them.
In the
Yeah.
relative terms, no, I
Right.
understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Everyone has a different kind of path as far as maybe for some folks having kids might be a challenge, but
Yeah,
once you've had them, the raising them is so much longer, so many more
of
years.
course.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and all that. So yeah. Okay, so let's now that we've gotten a chance to get to know you a little bit, and you're a new mom, so let's look at some trending relationship topics that are out there. And I'd love to have your take as you're a millennial, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
I would say I am.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
96. Yeah, I
Yes,
think I'm
yeah.
I'm the last in that category.
Yeah. So we'll get your opinion of
Okay.
things. All right. The first video is post-wedding blues.
Okay.
Post-wedding blues, or sometimes called post-wedding depression, still the same thing. It's something I don't think we talk about when it comes to African weddings. We like to party, we love the outfits, but is post-wedding depression or blues common among Africans? Is it real at all? I do believe post-wedding depression can happen. I believe it can happen. I do believe it can happen, but we don't talk about it. I've not seen a Nigerian bride, a Ghanaian bride, a South African bride. I have not seen African brides, African grooms, couples, or anybody talk about it that, oh, after the wedding, I was just depressed, or I was not feeling myself. I just, you know what depression is and all that. And I'll be attaching the meaning of post-wedding blues here, so you know what it actually means. But when it comes to African weddings, my point is we don't talk about it. We don't say anything. Is it not real? Share below in the comment section.
Yeah, I think I do have to admit I had never heard of post-wedding blues before. When I got married, I think that, well, let's kind of define post-wedding blues. And she also mentioned post-wedding depression. From my understanding, and feel free to correct me, post-wedding blues is similar to what we talked about with postpartum blues. It's kind of like the immediate after you've been working so hard towards this wedding, especially like for a woman, we grow up with the idea of marriage being a goal, and it's something we fantasize about from when we're little. So the anticipation has been building, not just after you've met your partner and you're now planning the wedding, but just for such a long time. And then so you get sad right after the wedding. It could last for like a couple weeks, and I think that it's easier to kind of shift your perspective from that, while the depression is kind of develops more into a clinical kind of a diagnosis, from what my understanding is of the two different things. Is this something that you have heard about in your circle of friends? Is it something that you're familiar, that you think that people have experienced, that you know, who've been married recently?
Oh yeah. One of my friends that got married recently, she definitely felt it a little bit. I agree with that video so much. I definitely agree because I went through it. I actually made a video on my channel about it, and I got so many comments talking about, thank you for making this because I felt the same way. Oh, when does it end? Or all those kind of things. And it's actually so true because, like she said, in African culture, we love to party, we love the enjoyment. Everyone is around you. In the moment, it's kind of annoying because just like, oh my gosh, I have another thing to do. Everyone is asking me about a show. Everyone's asking me about what the food is, what is this, what is this, how many guests. You have 100 people to 500 or even more coming out for your wedding or waiting for your big event. And then after that, it's crickets. It's like nothing. And just like you said, with the not postpartum, post-wedding blues, it's much shorter. It's just like, oh my gosh, where's everyone? No one loves me anymore. No one's thinking about me anymore. Everyone just wanted to come to my wedding, to my event, to eat and leave. But then the post wedding depression, it's like you start to compare what your expectation of what you thought marriage will look like to what marriage is looking like, to what you see other people's marriage looking like. And there's nothing about your marriage that can make you happy anymore. You're like, you love this person, you agreed to marry this person, and now you're just disappointed in the person because you see everything that people are posting on social media. You see everything that your brain has created of what marriage is supposed to look like. And if you stay in that, you become depressed. You become so sad, and it's just something you can't even shake because you have this expectation in your mind of what marriage is supposed to look like and what you see on social media that's not real. And there's nothing your partner could do or yourself could do. And most people won't seek help for that because it's like, how do you go tell a professional, oh, I just hate marriage because my husband didn't do X, Y, and Z. So the video she made, very, very true. I've heard a few people talk about it, but the first time I had come across it was when I first got married and I spoke about it in my video. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think so many things like the stigma in our culture around just anything to do with depression, anxiety. You have
It's not talked about.
your auntie
Yeah.
would tell you, why are you sad? What do you even have to
And
be
what do you
sad
have to
about?
be sad about? Yeah, that's
But
true.
but
It's
emotions are
so true.
so real, and what I really like is the fact that we're talking about it a lot more, which is
Yeah.
a big part of why I wanted to do this podcast, because we love the enjoyment, we love the partying, we love the wedding, we love all the
Yeah,
SYB, all the
SJB,
things.
everything, the
Uh,
food, the going viral on social media,
Oh,
everyone,
yes.
you know.
Her wedding went viral, by the way, people. The fact that people who have experienced it. I didn't experience it, and unfortunately, I haven't known anyone to experience this. I've definitely experienced depression, but not tied to a
To the
wedding.
whole, yeah,
Yeah, but I think it's so important to talk about it so that we kind of reduce the stigma and people can go out and seek the help they need, if it's
of
talking to
course,
a therapist or anything like that. But
very true.
there's another video we found that kind of gives another perspective, another opinion on this.
Okay.
So let's watch this video next.
You guys might disagree, but I do not think I'm going to deal with post-wedding sadness or the post-wedding blues at all. Get me out of here. I love planning events and putting things together, but I am so looking forward to my honeymoon where I know that I don't have to think about planning a wedding anymore and I can get back to my regular schedule. This has been fun and dandy, but dealing with people's emotions and honestly, people just being mean to me, I'm done with it. I'm over it. I am so excited for my wedding day, and I am also so excited to never plan a wedding again. You guys.
That's exactly how I felt. I said I'm ready for it to be over, but then when it actually was, and it's like, I think, maybe it's because I moved. That could also be it too. Maybe it's because I moved and literally I had just 2 months after my wedding that I was close to my family. After that, literally pregnant, moved across to the country, and everything was just like, okay, now I'm really on my own. But that feeling, I went to someone's wedding after my wedding, and I was like, oh, it feels so good to be a wedding guest. Oh, I just have to pick up food and just, oh, where's my seat? That was amazing. But when you move and you're like, okay, now you're away from all the people, that might give you, the post wedding blues and stuff. But she's right. Everyone's emotion, I can, it's just when I think back to my wedding, I wouldn't say drama, but just everything, like dealing with everyone. I agree.
It's so funny. Weddings bring out like so many emotions. I remember my wedding. I cried. I cried because of the pressure of like all these people and like people like our elders. It's almost like some of them want to live through you and through
Yes.
your wedding experience for an
Yes.
experience they never
Oh,
had.
yes.
And
Oh, yes.
everybody wants their kid in the wedding. Everybody like I'm like, how many like I can't, like, the funny thing is after my wedding, I stopped attending. I stopped attending weddings for a while.
Wow.
Unless I knew you, I didn't want to,
Hmm.
like, before I would just, oh, let's party, this wedding,
Yeah,
let's
let's go
go.
to the
But
wedding. Yeah.
I was like, nah, I'm good. And I also felt bad because, like, I understood the costs.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
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 Oh, it's
At that
so
point.
expensive. And just sometimes, like, I remember for mine too, at one point, because of the location, it's like kind of easy. We're outdoors, if there was not enough chairs and stuff, it's like, okay.
Mhm.
But there are some venues, like the other locations that we looked at, and it's indoors, like they're strict with the amount of people that you bring because it could be a fire hazard. There's not going to be enough chairs, all those stuff. And I'm just thinking, if we pay for each person's plate and then 5, 10, 20 more people come, it's not going to look like we didn't do well planning the wedding because some people are angry they didn't get food. And you also have to think about all the people, like the photographers, the videographers that are actually, making your dream and your vision come true. And you can't just leave them hungry,
Yeah.
So you have to factor in them too and have to just everything. It's like, it's so stressful to plan. And for me, like the girl that we just watched her video, I like planning. I enjoy it. At one point, I was like, actually, I should be an event planner. But when I planned my wedding, I said, no more. No, I'm not doing this because mm-mm, that is so stressful. But when it's someone else's event, it's pretty easy because it's not your money and it's not like your event. You just know you're not too tied to it. You just make it come to life. But I get what
Yeah.
she's saying.
Yeah.
I do.
And all this impacts your emotions, right? All
Hmm.
this is part of what the frustration of the planning of the wedding and also the
Yep.
letdown of it being over all add to either the blues or the depression. So I can see
Yep.
the connection there between the two. So
Yeah.
that was interesting. Definitely
It is.
something new that I learned there with post wedding blues. But now
Hmm.
let's move to the next video, which is the perfect moment syndrome, also related to new weddings or the start of a
Okay.
relationship.
This podcast has talked about post-wedding blues, but has anyone discussed post-wedding anxiety?
Oh my God. Well, this is exactly what I went through.
Yeah.
I didn't have the blues at all. I had like severe anxiety and it lasted like weeks for me. Your wedding is so weird. It really is like, it's like you're almost acting the entire day. There's also something that I found on TikTok. It was a therapist talking about this thing called perfect moment syndrome. It has a lot to do with people that like suffer with anxiety and OCD, but it's thinking about this moment, especially with like a wedding and envisioning in your mind how it's going to go. And then the actual moment comes and it always falls short of your expectations. So you're always going to be kind of disappointed because you have this perfect moment in your brain of how things are going to be. We all have these expectations that things are going to go a certain way and they never do because we're human and we're flawed and that's okay. And that's what makes like life awesome and beautiful.
Yeah. So the advice I give typically to folks who come and ask for advice about their wedding is like, oh, do all the planning, do all the things. But on that day, just let the day unfold, like how it's going
Yeah.
to unfold. Because
Yep.
you kind of have to let go and you can't control anything at
You
that point in
can't.
time. Yes, that's what
Mm-mm.
I told people. But that's not what I did.
That's not what you did? Well, you learned from it, so you can
Yeah.
tell others. If they want to learn, they will. If not, they'll have to experience it to find out. Because I think so many people had told me that, and I was like, let me tell you, I'm not gonna stress about this day. Someone commented on the video and was like, "This is the happiest bride I've ever seen." Because genuinely, I was so happy. I was like, if the canopy falls, let it fall on our head. If it rains, because remember it was supposed to
Yeah.
rain and it was
Yeah.
only that area it wasn't raining.
Mhm.
I said if it rains, it's me that did my makeup. I can go back inside and fix it,
Mhm.
so I wasn't worried about anything. Like I was like, if the food finished, water finished, drink finished, but guess what, no one noticed, no one cared, they were still dancing. I could be in the back crying somewhere like, oh my god, my wedding has no food. Did I even eat at my wedding? I didn't. So so why would I? And I think that that's very true. The perfect moment syndrome. I haven't heard of that before, but yeah, it's very real. And like she said, you feel like you're acting that day. It's like, people expect you to cry when you're walking down the aisle. So some people cry. I said it from the rehearsal. I said, why am I crying? how many years have I been with this boy? Why am I crying? I understand why he would cry for me, which
Yes,
he did, but
right.
and at one point I did cry during the vows because,
Mhm.
it was just something so sweet. And it's usually if Reggie does say stuff like that, I would cry, whether cameras are there or not, just like our handshake, whether anyone is there or not. But like, I didn't picture it as any kind of perfect moment. I actually told myself, like, you know what, it's just a birthday. I'm going for my birthday. If I saw it as like this big event, I would get so nervous and I would be like, oh, I don't know what to do. It's my birthday. Everyone is looking at me and telling me how to forget Reggie, it's my day. That's how I saw it. It was just me. So I think if you do think about it as like, oh my gosh, it has to be perfect, everything, you definitely will have that anxiety and all those things leading up to the day. And it could ruin it. It could ruin the whole day.
Yeah. No, I
It
can
could.
definitely see the extreme of it and letting so much anxiety in. But what I would say is like for me, I just had this idea. It was I wasn't like obsessed with the whole day, like so
Hmm.
much stuff. There's always so much behind the scenes drams. There
Yeah.
was all the things happened. And I was fine with all that. But the one thing that got me was my veil. I just did not like
Mm.
how it came out in the pictures. I
Aw.
was like weird.
That I get it. The outfit is very important. Yeah, I can
But
get that.
mhm. I think it's
But
so
everything, yeah, go ahead. Oh, go
important to
ahead.
put the day in perspective for yourself
Hmm.
as a bride or as a groom, and like it's just one day, and like you just let loose and like
Yeah,
soak in the day. If not,
yeah,
it gets lost in like something like this, which I had also never heard of, like the perfect
yeah.
moment syndrome. But
Moment syndrome.
it resonates with me. I can really see how that can affect, and all these things can affect your relationship. In like,
Hmm.
these are seeds for how you're starting your life together.
Oh,
And
yes.
depending on how intense they are, it can come into your relationship for a long time, whether it's the blues or the postpartum
Yeah,
depression. So I think it's
yeah.
really important to try and see it, like place the day in perspective is what I would
Hmm.
say for
I
sure. So
agree. Just like you said, it can just, come into your marriage. That is the beginning of a marriage. And the marriage is the important part, not just the wedding. The wedding is the celebration, it's nice and everything, but the hard work starts the next day. You have to set the tone the next day and how you want your marriage to be. I mean, it starts before that, obviously, but like
mhm.
now you're really married. And it's just like if you have that perfect moment, for me, what I think though is if you have that perfect moment syndrome for your wedding, there's gonna be a lot of things that you'll have, you label as the perfect moment as well. Like, oh, our first Valentine's Day, I'm sure my husband is gonna do this for me. And if he doesn't, even the things he might do, you might be like, oh, he didn't do, you know, and then that's when comparison comes in, and everything is on social media these days. Everything, and comparison is the thief of all of our joy. So if we keep comparing ourselves and we're just like, oh, I want how they make the money roses.
Yeah, the money bouquets.
Right, exactly. If you don't get that for Valentine's
Mhm.
Day, oh, my husband hates me. Oh, if you don't get a car for your push present, oh, my husband doesn't appreciate you. All these things. And sometimes when I talk to my mom about it, like, oh, did you see this? She's like, in my day, there was none of these things, and now even if there were, they had no one to compare it to unless your friend comes to your house and tells you like, oh, my husband just did me, got this or
Mhm.
did this, or you will never know what other people's marriage looks like. So it's very easy to I feel like these things are common now because there's so many things to compare it to. We see all the beautiful weddings every year. It's just getting more and more and more intense. Like wedding venues, they're making money. Wedding
Yeah.
vendors, they're making money because every year everyone's like, oh, mine's gonna be. They're not even doing it better for themselves, but it's like better because last year's most popular video, they want to beat that so that they can have the best wedding, best dress, best this, best that. So it's like you compare it to that person that you don't even know. You don't even know the person, you know? And
Yeah.
it's actually so weird to see this because I saw like this was 2016 maybe, this amazing wedding, amazing, beautiful, it went viral, and like they had a baby and everything, and years later like they're no longer together, and so many people were like, oh my gosh, I was looking up to you guys. I wanted my wedding to be just like you guys and everything. And that puts pressure on their relationship because everyone's looking to make sure they're still the perfect couple that they imagined, and they don't know that. And then that puts pressure on other people's future spouses. Like, oh, I want the same exact. Some people might not even marry the person they want to marry because, oh, this couple was, one was African, one was white, or one was this and one was that, just because they're trying to mimic somebody else's, you know.
Yeah, and social media is those are highlight reels.
Yep.
It's just not reality. And I
Hmm.
think that it's so important to put it in perspective. Are you interested in having the perfect day, or are you really interested in setting the tone and foundation for your
For your
marriage
life, yeah, for
going
your whole marriage.
forward? Are you just going to be copying these people that you don't know and letting them
Hmm.
have such a huge influence on your life and everything just for one day? But
Yeah.
I think this leads us really well into mental checkups before your marriage, the next video that we have.
Hmm.
I once met a man who was diagnosed with a sickness where he needed to be in a psychiatric hospital in order to defeat some of the mental schizophrenia behaviors that he was going through. The parents refused to take him there. Do you know what happened? He ended up marrying a lovely girl from the church world, and he abused her, beat her up. She did not know that he was actually a psychiatric patient. The thing that you need to know about marriage is that some parents and some of these spouses are not going to reveal the fact that they are actually psychiatric patients. There are actually people who need mental solutions. There are people who are schizophrenia, even bipolar. Today they're like this, tomorrow they're like that. That's why some of you, when you get all these silent treatments, it's coming because of medical conditions. And you don't understand that you are fighting a mental disorder. And what happens? You end up losing 30, 40 years of your life trying to solve a medical condition that you were not being made aware of from the beginning. When you get married or before you get married, study your spouse well. Matter of fact, I would even tell people, don't only go for HIV/AIDS tests, also go for mental checkups so that you may know that you are not marrying a lunatic in the flesh, whether wife.
So, like, I'm a huge proponent of therapy, and I think this is actually the part of marriage or before you become really committed that I think is so crucial. That idea of really getting to know your partner. And I want to be careful with the mental health aspect of it. While being bipolar, being schizophrenic, these are mental health conditions and they're very treatable. You can get, especially today, you can get help for it. You get on medication. You can have therapeutic interventions. So I think it's important to be careful about how we talk about them because there's such a stigma already around these kind of conditions. At the same time, I think it's so important to really spend the time and slow down and get to know your spouse. And this is where it becomes about your marriage and not like the wedding, because there are like so many books you can get into of, all the questions to ask before you get married, getting premarital counseling. Those are things that I'm just such a huge kind of proponent of. But I'm curious, what are some ways in which, in addition to your thoughts about the video, what are some ways in which you guys kind of prepared for your marriage as well?
That's a good one because what he was saying in that video is so true. It's so true. And even besides like the mental illness, like some people enable their children so much and then you just have entitled men and women running around and just behaving any which way. And it's very interesting to see him word it that way because you can enter into a marriage with someone and maybe know them for years, but when you live with a person, it is so different. When you are spending every second of your life, maybe not every second, they go to work, whatever, but majority of your time with that person, you see the person but without the makeup, without the wig, without the weave, without the nice haircut, if they have false teeth, nothing is in their mouth. Like without any of it, this is complete vulnerability.
Yeah.
And you realize, okay, do I still like understand who this person is? And for us, like we had a long time. We dated for a while before we got married, and we did marital counseling at the church before that. And I just think like we never had like mentors and stuff, but we kind of did without knowing. We always like try to talk to people that have been married, whether they're older, younger, whatever the case may be, just talk to them and see what it's like and understand, like, especially if you're so different from your spouse and like little things and how do you handle conflict and finances and what do you want to do? These are questions they tell you to ask, but sometimes they get lost. When you see the person, you're like, oh, this person's so attractive. They're just my type, you just forget about those things. And then when you're actually married to the person, that's when you're like, wait a second, how did I not know this about you? Even the little things before you start to even like somebody. I think my mom always told me this before you even get invested. For me, with someone with sickle cell, I have to ask before I even, I'm like, oh, what's your blood type and all that kind of stuff. But the same thing, like, oh, what was your last relationship like? Why did it end? If they give you, oh, that person, that person, that person, the other person was wrong, are you sure? Is every relationship that you've been through, the other person's the wrong and you're the common denominator in the situation, and just seeing how they are with their family, seeing how they are with friends, around other people. My mom always encouraged watching how they are with other people, besides how they are with you. They like you. What happens the day they don't like you? You can choose to love your spouse and love someone every single day, but do you like that person? Do you actually like the person? Is the person actually your friend? And when I started to think about that, like before we even started dating, when we were just friends, we always used to hang out with other people, and I was very observant because I don't want to fall for someone and not have to go through that whole heartbreak process. I'm watching before I even get invested. I'm talking to you about like past relationships, how you are with friends, random strangers, people around you in your community. And just that mental check, we definitely had to kind of not, I wouldn't say test each other, but you know, you kind of are testing each other each time. Oh, what can I do if I say something that like this? Does it affect him, or how does he react to it? How is he when I annoy him? Because everyone can get annoying at some point, and that's how you can kind of see, like, is this person there the way I need them to be? And am I there for them? Because you could be the quote unquote perfect person to yourself, and he could feel like he's the most perfect person. But when you guys come together, is that the perfect match you need? Is that person able to be there when mentally you're not there? Especially when children come into the picture and you're like, okay, like women that have postpartum depression or whatever, like when they're not there and they're not able to take care of the children, do you know how to nurture her back into the woman she needs to be? And vice versa. If the man is sick or he's going through whatever, can you bring him back, like not just physically, but mentally? Can you help lift him back into that space that he needs to be? And all those things, like, it's very important. And just having a neutral party, like when we went to counseling and stuff, and having that neutral party, especially for us as Christians, we had a pastor, and he's outlining what marriage is supposed to look like for us based on what the Bible says. And when we have that, it makes us always, no matter what the conflict is, we always go back to that and say, okay, this is what we understand. We're both Christians. This is what marriage is supposed to be like. This is what the Bible says. This is what we're supposed to be doing. So you might think you're right. I might think I'm right, but we're both wrong according to what the Bible says. So that was a really good one. That was really good.
I just have to point this out. I love what you said about, which is why I love premarital counseling so much, because like you both have your pastor now. And it's not like your mom or his mom or anybody.
Right,
You have like this neutral person, and then you've discussed the blueprint you want for your marriage. So you have something that you can go back to, because
Go back to, yeah.
when you're upset with each other, I mean, it's hard. It's hard at those moments, but then you can go back to this neutral person that can really
Yep,
help remind you of the marriage that you said you wanted to have. So
exactly.
yeah, in
And the
addition
best
to your
part too, right? And the best part too with that counseling that we did is like you don't go back to just like the pastor, but you know that we all three of us sat there and he's opening the scripture and saying, "Oh, this is what you can go back by yourself to the
you can go
Bible
to
and to the
Bible,
Word of
yeah,
God."
yeah.
Exactly, you know. And just like we also have our notebook that we had, and we wrote some stuff in there, and wrote like, you know, this was counseling that we did in 2020. I think 2020, yeah, we did that in 2020, and now we're in 2024. We can go back and look and be like, oh, okay. I said I would be, you know, he wrote something like, oh, when she has kids, I know I have to make sure I buy her all this stuff if she wants a new wardrobe because of, you know, how your body changes with children and all this stuff. He's already wrote it down there and promised. You know what I mean?
Did you get your new clothes?
I did not give my. I didn't
Reggie,
because I
we need
told
to give you a phone
myself.
call.
I told myself I'm gonna give back to fit my other clothes,
Yeah.
but
Okay. Good for you. Good for you. Good for you. All right, let's get to the last video. We're having a good time today. We're so off our time schedule, but it's fun. Let's get to the last video.
Have weddings that are way far beyond their budget to impress people that are not even really in their life. They get divorced and are still paying off wedding debt. A wedding is a day. A marriage is a lifetime. It saddens me the amount of couples, based upon pressures, we spend all this money we don't have for a great day, as opposed to what are the tools so we can have a great marriage. There are.
You go.
Yep.
You just go.
I agree 1,000%. And I would keep going back to, because when I started, I had like a wedding planning series on my channel, and the post wedding, like it was called After the Aisle on my channel as well. That's when I talked about like the post wedding blues and everything. But it is so true. So many people, especially for us as Africans, you have a side that wants to honor your African roots and culture, and then you have the side that you want to wear the big white dress too. You know, who did it? Like that's what I dreamed of. Like I dreamt of the big white dress, not just the. I never actually knew what my traditional wedding would look like. You know, so people have that image in their head, and especially as Africans, you want to do it for your mom, your dad, everybody, the culture and stuff, and you end up putting so much on your plate that you can't even actually afford. And I remember, which is good for African culture because, you know, they spray money. Not everyone, but, you know, thank God for my situation was different. But I was like, this has to be something that if they don't spray us money, we still have money for our rent. We still have money for food, you know. And during that whole wedding planning time, like I remember we were still like we were planning the wedding, but we are still looking for our own place, not me moving to his or him moving to mine and everything. And the day is coming, you know, and we had to just we couldn't find a place that would move us in immediately. But I was like, oh my goodness, what if we can't find a place and we don't, you know, before the wedding, we don't put our uh, whatever payment we need to pay beforehand? What if we end up spending all of our money on our wedding and everything? Then what are we going to do? You know, but thank God we didn't because we ended up finding a place like a month later. But I kept thinking like all the wedding venues we went to see, some 42K, like for just the venue, not even enough hours. And it's like a drive from everyone. But sometimes people have to come back to reality, you know, and that's one thing that God really used my mom to teach me. We came back to reality. We did both the traditional and the white wedding, but we were able to do it in the same place with spend all the time we wanted. Um, we didn't have to pay as much because we were at church. We went to that church and everything, and it was still just a perfect day or perfect days. Um, but sometimes we get lost in the fairy tale, the this, the that. I want this, I want that. And like he said, years later, some of them get divorced and they're still paying it off. God forbid, I would never like to see anyone in that situation. It must be so painful, but like it's expensive and it's not coming down. It's going higher and higher and higher.
I
So,
mean, one of the things that happened when I was married before, I traveled to another country and I met someone there in that country that told me, oh, that I had never met before, according to my mind. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. I was at your wedding. It was such a nice wedding. I was like, in my mind,
yeah,
I'm like, who are you? Because I don't know
I
you.
know.
So, I
That still
mean,
happens to me too.
like it's wild to me. But
Yeah,
I mean, our culture is so like thousands of people show up at your wedding
yeah,
and like you have to cater to all of them and it's just not realistic. Like going
it's
back
not.
now, I just tell anyone, look, it's your I mean, you have to like do stuff for the culture on some
Of
level,
course,
eh,
yeah.
but still be cognizant of like the life you want afterwards. Don't just
Exactly.
put everything in that day and then you
Yep.
can't even buy a cup of
Eat.
water. Eat
Exactly,
the very
exactly.
basics, you
Yeah,
know?
that's very true. And the
No.
thing too, I noticed is like with our culture, before, like back in the day, I guess, like, I don't know if this is accurate since I wasn't there or anything, but before, they would host weddings at the house or at like the compound, and everyone brings things, chipping in. It's like not the bride and groom just spending so much money. Yes, the groom will pay the dowry and bride price or whatever, but they weren't spending their life saving so much money. Meanwhile, it was the community coming together, giving them a cow, giving them goats, giving them furniture for their home, giving them all those things, like blessing them, and coming to actually celebrate them. Now it's the reverse. You are the one sponsoring everyone's meal for that day. You're sponsoring their enjoyment. You're sponsoring everything. And you're thinking these people are coming to celebrate you. And then 2 seconds you turn and see someone saying, the rice was not even that nice. You know? It's like you're sponsoring everything for them that day, and no one's buying the gifts on the. I mean, people do buy, but no one's either buying the gifts on the registry or sending like congratulations. Here's $50. Like no one is actually pouring into your marriage like how it was back then. When they used to do all the cultural stuff, when they used to do all those things. It's different when you have a group of 50 aunties just cooking together saying, oh, we're celebrating our little nieces getting married. So I
Yeah.
think that's where everything gets, mixed up.
The culture has shifted, but the expectation is
It's
now
the
the
same.
burden is so great.
Yeah.
It's even more because we're doing it in a different place. Like if we were doing it
Yeah.
back home, like you said, you do it in the compound. Everybody kind
Yeah.
of chips in. But here, only the people who are really close that will kind of even show up
Yeah.
really, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And like you said, they're going to be talking about you like it'll be like that rice, but
Yeah,
it wasn't
exactly.
even everything,
Yeah.
so I think it's really important to put it in perspective, and like we'll link it in the show notes, but like there are ways in which to think about how much money you spend on your wedding. There something I saw online was only spending 10% of what your combined income is, really thinking about it in advance. If I ever were to get married again, definitely I'm not like I'm immune to pressure. So it's going to be super small.
Which is good.
So it'd be like so small. They can all
Yeah.
be upset, but yeah,
That's their
no.
business, as you say anyway.
Exactly. So let's go into the group chat.
Okay.
And take some questions from the group chat. And this is the group chat segment of the show. So the first question I have is, I've noticed that the passion between my partner and me has dimmed a bit. Life's gotten in the way. What are some effective ways to rekindle the spark and deepen our connection again? What do you think? You're in a few years and you're married. Yeah.
Vacation, travel. If you have kids, ditch them.
Grandma.
Give them to somebody else. I think that's the best solution. I've not been married that long, but for sure, I definitely think we've gone through that because we had a child like 5 seconds after having our wedding. So like I feel like we just went from 1 week of being married to feeling like it's been 10 years because we're raising a child and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like anytime we do get a chance to get away, or even if you travel with your kids, there's nothing wrong with that. But just like change of scenery, change of environment, eating different food, not being in the same routine, you know, going out, even if you can't go out like and travel, staycations are there. Just get out of your house, open the windows, let fresh new air come in, you know, find someone to go and see their life and be like, oh, that's so funny. We don't do that in our marriage. Not gossip per se, but like, you know, laugh about things and that other people are going through that's funny and be like, oh, you know, we're here complaining about this when their kids are beating them up. They have 5 kids and they're beating them up, and we have one and we're complaining. You know, when you find things to laugh about, I think that really helps.
Yeah, putting
in
things
my
in
opinion.
perspective, right? Putting
Yeah,
your challenges in a bigger perspective. I agree
right,
with
right.
everything you say. I love me a good vacation,
Yes,
or a good staycation anytime. One thing I could add to that is also just this suggestion that a friend of mine did, where her and her husband, they both went separately to a bar and they hit on
yes, and
each
they act.
other
Oh my
like
goodness,
they didn't know each other.
yes, I tell Reggie, let's do that, and
Yeah.
it's
Like
funny.
you're
I hope
meeting
my
for the
mom
first
doesn't
time.
listen. But sometimes I tell him, and I'm just like, oh, let's act like we're having an affair with each other. I can be your, you know, your
Yeah,
mistress or something. But
yeah,
he's like,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
no, no. I'm like, don't be holy. I can be your
Yes,
mistress. Do you want me to have red hair? I can have red hair. What do you need?
exactly. Yeah. And
But
just
it's fun.
planning something like that to get
Yeah,
yourself out of that routine, something
yeah,
different. And
yeah.
it just depends on like what your activities that you like as a couple are, whether
Hmm.
it's like, hiking. There's so many things, but
So
I think
many
it's so
things.
important to get yourselves out of that regular
Yeah.
routine. Yeah.
Trying something new too, like
Mhm.
something funny, ice skating. If you don't know how to ice
Mhm.
skate, it's hilarious. We did it over the Christmas break. It was so funny.
Yeah.
You'll be laughing for months,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Just the learning of something new with your
Hmm.
partner and giving each other grace because
Exactly.
neither of you know it,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question. My partner and I have very different ways of communicating, especially when it comes to expressing our needs and frustrations. It often leads to misunderstanding. Can you share strategies or advice on how to bridge the communication gap? Mm.
I'm still learning too.
Yeah,
With
communication is
communication,
hard.
yeah, it is. You're gonna keep learning every day. Like I feel like even before we got married, we have all the books. I'm looking at them right now. All the books from our wedding and like from the bridal shower and all of those things like your love languages and all those stuff. Like you can read them, understand them, but then I think they kind of change with
Mhm,
time and like over the years they kind of change and you with communicating, you're constantly learning your partner and they will change. Sometimes they're in like a quiet season of their life where they just want, their space, or sometimes they're in this like season where things are just everything is just so sensitive to them. It just depends. Every time you just have to keep on finding new ways. Are you the person that's a nonverbal communicator? I feel like, some people are very good with reading body language, women more, in my opinion. We can read the body language and we adjust already before you even say anything. But for men, like sometimes it's just like you have to spell it out word for word. And
mhm,
if that person is like a woman and she feels like maybe she's saying it, we can beat around the bush
mhm,
too much. Just
mhm,
say it.
mhm,
And if the person gets like, if your partner gets offended, explain to them, I'm not trying to offend you,
mhm,
but this is something I need. And it is causing me to resent you because you don't see it. I can look at you and know what you need,
mhm.
but you will look at me and not even notice that I have eyelashes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, you're like you have wisdom. You say only 3. I actually have been married 10 years. But like you're so right in like men and women, these are broad stereotypes, right? It's important to know your own partner, have different ways of communication. And like we are more acculturated to be social. So we tend to pick up a bit more on the social cues and just in terms of like making sure what's happening in our environment. While I think it's important, like you said, to be very clear with your partner. Each person should be clear because nobody's a mind reader. So I think you should be able to say anything to your partner as long as the delivery is respectful. If you need to take time out, if you're emotionally charged, I think it's important, even before you get to that difficult communication, to express to your partner, okay, this is whenever we get upset, I need to take time for myself. I'm going to take 2 hours from this argument for myself. And then after 2 hours, we'll come back to it. I think it's so important to never just walk away and your partner is left
confused.
When are we going to talk about it? Because that just can raise so much anxiety. I feel like you're both on the same team and you're both fighting for your relationship. So trying to turn towards each other, towards making the relationship work versus okay, each person wanting to be right. Because you can be right and you can be alone, or you can be vulnerable and be in your relationship.
That's very true. That's very true.
Gonna have to take a choice here, but yeah, I think communication is always hard. Again, like you said, it's seasons. Every season of life is different, and I think we can also reframe it and say, and it allows you to be curious because you're literally married to a different person in each season of that person's life, and you get to experience a different part of them if you're curious about them, and you can see the benefits of maybe this season for that partner. So I think if we remain in that posture, then we get to learn another side to our partner through our communication. But yeah. Okay. So the third question from the group chat is, I'm reaching out because trust has been tricky in my relationship due to past mistakes on each side. What steps can we take to rebuild trust and ensure our relationship becomes stronger moving forward?
Trust, that's a hard one. In my experience, I wouldn't say I have experience with that because Reggie and I have been together for a while, but from the beginning, we stated, things that could break our trust with one another. And we have just made sure we don't even cross that line because trust is so easy to break, but it's so hard to rebuild. And I feel like if you have both agreed that, okay, for real, we're trying to rebuild this trust, then you both have to do everything to prove it, to make that person comfortable. If you broke someone's trust, like if I broke your trust, I cannot say, okay, get over it. Now it's time for you to trust me again. I have to respect your timeline. I did something that crossed your boundaries and crossed what you've said and told me, or whether you told me or not, something that's hurtful to you. And I've crossed the line. And if I want to prove to you that I want to regain your trust, I'm going to have to follow your timeline, do the things necessary that if you write out a list and say, okay, if you're doing these things, it's going to help me build that trust back. I need to respect that, follow that, and trust that, okay, we both committed that we're going to rebuild our trust. And if you can, after doing all those things, you still look at me and say, I can't trust you, then I don't think there's a possible way to rebuild that trust. If you try doing everything that the person needs, giving them the time that they need and following their timeline and everything. If not, then you have to be open and say, look, I can't do this. Maybe with the steps that I've put by myself, maybe we need to see someone, a professional, for help. And even working through that, like, you have to be patient, you have to give it time, and you have to be open to saying, okay, I've made the decision to trust you again, or to work towards trusting you again, and we're working towards it. As long as both parties are committed, I think it should work. That's why I think.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head right there. Trust is just so hard to rebuild. You're just better off doing the best you can to respect the other person's boundaries and their non-negotiables. But it seems like this person finds themselves in a situation where the trust has been broken on both sides. So exactly what you said, you can't hurry the person up. You have to like give them the time they need and the process they have and respect that. And I have seen where trust can be rebuilt back, but it's a very difficult process. Like I think like if there has been financial infidelity, if the person says, "Oh, I need to see our bank statements right now," in the rebuilding process, you have to be like, "Okay, here are our bank statements. I didn't like overspend money. I didn't do anything that we didn't agree that I should do." So it's this constant reassurance till that person can relax that part. So it's such a difficult thing to rebuild, but it's definitely possible. And like you said, the therapy or the third party or whatever method of counseling or whatever neutral third party you want to bring in. I don't want to. I love therapy. I like it, but I know not it may not be for everybody. It could be a pastor. It could be, it could even be an elder, that you just respect that has seen things. I mean, you want to be careful who the person is that you're bringing in, but like some neutral third party that can help you guys rebuild is definitely an option as well towards rebuilding trust.
I agree.
Yeah. So now, I think this is the last question we have. Financial stress is starting to take its toll on my relationship. It feels like money worries are all we talk about lately. Do you have any advice on how we can manage these stresses without letting them overwhelm our connection?
Finances, finances, finances. In counseling, they had told us that finances can literally be one of the main things that people fight about or even get divorced on. So I definitely think like I know a lot of people, especially some people that do like the prenup and all that stuff, they try and go through all their stuff before marriage, try and check everyone's credit, try and check what debt they have and all those things just to know what they're getting themselves into. But sometimes life